Check out my tips and tricks for an easy do-it-yourself wainscoting project using trim frames nailed to painted drywall. It's a piece of cake. Bear with me as we go over some basics and then we'll get to the good stuff, all right? Be sure to paint your drywall white before you put up your wainscoting frames. It'll make it a lot easier. Also, I bought trim that was already primed white. So that way, once I put it up, I just had to do a little bit of touch up and my painting was done. So the first thing to do is to measure each section of wall, sketch it on a piece of paper, and then you want to kind of draw your frames on there and determine the width for each of the frames, okay? You've got different wall sections these are going on. So for each different wall section, the frames are gonna be a little bit different width. Let me explain. This wall over here, I've got 2 frames, and this wall right behind me, I've got 2 frames. But the walls are different width. So the frames over here, even though they match each other, this one is the same width as this one, they are different width from this and this frame, okay? But I don't want, these to be maybe 16 inches wide and these to be 30 inches wide. That would just look really weird. You want them to be as uniform as possible. So if this section of wall here gets too wide, I'm gonna go to 3 frames instead of 2. So come up with a rule, like my frames are gonna be no wider than 24 inches and no narrower than 18 inches, okay? Something like that. That way they look more uniform from one wall to the next wall and your whole project will look a lot nicer, okay? For this project, here are some standards that we're gonna hold, okay? We're gonna have 3.5 inches above the frames, 3.5 inches below the frames, 3.5 inches between the frames, 3.5 inches off of a door frame, 3.5 inches off of a corner, okay? So what you can do is put up your chair rail, and then you want to measure from the bottom of your chair rail down to the top of your baseboard. Subtract 7 inches, 3.5 and 3.5. That tells you the height of your frames, okay? You're gonna have a whole bunch of pieces that are the exact same height, okay? That's the easy part of the frames, okay? Then I want to measure from my door frame to my corner, and I'm gonna subtract 7 inches, and then I'm gonna subtract 3.5 inches for every spot between a frame. So if I just have 2 frames, I'm gonna subtract 3.5 inches. If I have 3 frames, I'm gonna subtract 7 inches, and so on, okay? Doing that will end up telling you what the width of this piece is right here, okay? So what you do is you sketch this all up, and then you can count up all your common parts. You might end up having 80 of these, and then you can just cut them all at once. You get a common setup on your saw, boom, 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 cut them all out, makes it a piece of cake. And then you might only have 4 of these, 1, 2, 3, 4. Mark it on your drawing, the width of this frame, how many of these frames you're gonna need, and then you can just go out there and we're gonna build these frames and then we'll come install it all. So let's go outside, we'll take a look at the saw setup and an efficient way to do this. Now, here's a trick to keep you from constantly rotating your saw to cut the opposing 45-degree angles at each end of each piece, and to keep you from having to keep measuring and checking each piece. Let's say our pieces need to finish at 18 inches long. Set a stop at 20 inches from the blade. For the stop, I just clamp a board to the table. This lets you push your stock up to the stop and make your cut without measuring. Here I'm making the first cut on each piece at 20 inches. After all the pieces are cut to 20 inches, set the saw to cut the 45 at the other end of the pieces and set your stop to 18 inches from the blade. Now you can make the final cut on all the pieces without having to measure and without having to keep rotating the saw. This really speeds things up. Here's a trick for assembling the frames. To make sure the frames are nice and square, I screwed down a carpenter's square to my work surface. This allows me to join 2 sides of the frame into an L-shaped piece, and I know that they are square. Add a little bit of super glue to each piece and then brad nail them together. Next, you want to take your 2 L-shaped pieces and assemble them together. Again, a little bit of super glue on each piece and some brad nails, and you will have a frame that's ready to go up on the wall. Sooner or later, you're going to shoot a brad nail out the back or out the front of your frame. To pull the brad nail out, clamp the frame to your work surface and grab the brad nail with some pliers. Then hit the pliers with one quick blow from a hammer. This will pull the nail out with minimal damage. Make up all your different size frames and then you're ready to start putting them up on the wall. All right, here's a little tip. I made a 90-degree piece out of baseboard. So I got my 3.5 inches here, 3.5 inches here. Now I can just drop it on the wall and push it up against my door casing. Take my frame, set it in place, and nail it. Now I just move it down, push it up against the one I just installed, set my next frame, and nail it. Looking good. For final touches, you want to fill all your nail holes and then sand them, and then go and put white caulk between the frame and the drywall. Your drywall is not going to be perfectly flat, so this definitely will help fill any gaps that you see, and it just makes it look like a perfect finished wainscoting project. All right, now you're going to want to watch part 2 of this video if you want to see how to do tricky areas like stairwells where the walls aren't just simple rectangles, all right? I'll show you how to lay it out, how to get all your angles just perfect so your frames will fit together nicely, and it'll be done just right, just the way your wife wants it, right? You don't want to have to redo this, so check it out. And hey guys, if you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. I hope you'll subscribe and maybe share this with a friend, and I'll see you later, guys. Thanks. Bye.